The Financial Times has cited Dr. Harari as one of the top business and management minds in the world and featured him in the fall 2001 book, Business Minds.
When I was growing up, there was a show called Laugh-In. Do you remember that TV show called Laugh-In? And there was this character on Laugh-In. Remember this person? Remember this person? Lily Tomlin. And she was a Bell telephone operator. And if you remember back then, Bell telephone operators used to do this all the time with plugs and things like that. And she would say things like, "We don't have to be nice to you, we're the phone company." Remember that? And she could do that for a very simple reason. That at the time, in the 70s, before 1984 divestiture, AT&T had a reasonably good market share of the total telecom space. Would you agree that 100% is pretty good? Now, some of you, particularly in your private sector folks, have, anal boards of directors who might have said, could we bump that up a little? But most folks would say 100% ain't bad. Now, last year, AT&T was so grossly undervalued. It had been hemorrhaging cash. Its stock had dropped 70-some% over the prior 5 years, that it was bought by SBC for a paltry $16 billion. And just to keep that in perspective, at the same time that deal was happening, Procter & Gamble bought Gillette. Remember Gillette? Gillette for $57 billion. Now, what's all this about? What's all this about is something real simple. AT&T understood, the executives weren't stupid. In fact, every once in a while when they felt masochistic, they would call me in to address them, and then they would nod ruefully, and they'd go out, and they'd do the same damn thing on and on and on. They worked steady state, because what was their big growth business? Their big growth business at the time, their double-digit, high-margin business was what? It was long-distance voice. The whole company was built around long-distance voice. Local stuff didn't pay the bills. It was that long-distance voice. But what happened to long-distance voice? Well, increasingly, what happened was that long-distance voice became a lower and lower margin commodity offered by more and more players, and ultimately AT&T became less and less relevant as the future of telecom morphed into who could put together voice, video, and data in the most effective and fun and mobile and wireless way. And AT&T was not able to do it because their sunk costs, their corporate culture, the executives' egos, and everything around the business revolved around, here's how we have always done it. It worked in the past. Why shouldn't it work in the future? As Henry Cisneros said, because steady state management doesn't work anymore. And as I said, in the case of AT&T, it's not as if we were using less telecom. We were using more telecom. But in reality, as I said, it became less and less relevant. When you get to this point, things get pretty bad.
So you have a product or service that you think is number one. It breaks the mold. It's better than anything the competition can feel, right? Wrong. It's only a matter of time before today's great innovation is tomorrow's commodity. And it's sooner than you think. What do you do about it? How do you escape from this copycat economy? Engage Dr. Oren Harari for your next event and break from the pack.
What we see over here is the fact that it is more and more vendors offering similar sorts of wares, goods and services, and ultimately what happens is everyone starts looking the same. whether it's to customers or to investors that often follow the customers, and ultimately that's what starts damaging, and not just an organization's brand, but its ability to differentiate itself, its ability to grow in a healthy way, its ability to attract more customers, its ability to attract the best and brightest talent. And so what I want to be talking to you about is how can we break from that environment? And I got to tell you, we are all in it. We're all in it. I mean, it doesn't matter the business that you're in. I mean, I worked with Morgan Stanley for a year in their mutual fund division. The first thing they told me when I came into the room, they said, first thing you got to know about our business, Oren, is that mutual funds are a commodity. And I go, commodity? What are you talking about? They said, look, a few years ago, mutual funds were really cool. Now, there are more mutual funds, thousands of them, more of them than all of the individual stocks in the New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ combined. And at the end of the day, unless they're grossly mismanaged, their yield and performance are pretty much the same. How do we differentiate? Remember hedge funds, supposed to be for rich people? Everyone wants to appear rich in America. So you know what they do? Now there's a whole bunch of mech hedge funds. You know, there are now more hedge funds than Taco Bells in this country. There are over 6,000 Taco Bells, well over 8,000 registered hedge funds. We can all feel rich. You know, it's interesting. The CEO at Whirlpool, here's where he got his big shock that led finally to some drastic changes. What he said was this. He said, I go into an appliance store. This is the CEO of Whirlpool. I go to an appliance store. Now, I have pretty good eyes. I stand 40 feet away from a line of washers, and I can't pick ours out. They all look alike. They all have decent quality. They all have the same price point. It's a sea of white. And that's what, in the world, it doesn't matter what industry you're talking about, customers have choices. It's all a sea of white. And that is why what I argue in my new book is that any executive's capacity to decommoditize what they're doing and unimitate what they're doing on a perpetual basis is the most important strategic question that you will be facing, at least for the remainder of this decade. How do you decommoditize? And here's the tip. What many of us do is we try to circle the wagons to protect what made us great in the past. That doesn't work. When Motorola was challenged by an upstart Nokia, Nokia launched, capitalized on the digital revolution. Motorola owned the analog space. Boy, Motorola did everything to beef up analog, meant higher quality, more efficiency, lower cost, better marketing. But ultimately, as the Dakota Indians say, if you find yourself riding on a dead horse, the best strategy is to dismount. And the fact is that we don't dismount. We continue to use our skills, and we work harder and harder and harder at it, and working harder isn't the solution. The whole